Hello, friends. This is Dorie Clark. I am coming to you live from Washington, D.C., from a hotel room with bad internet, but we are making it happen. We are being very super crafty today, and I am so happy to bring you my friend Melissa Daimler. Melissa is the CLO, the Chief Learning Officer of Udemy, and even more to the point today, she is the author of the book ReCulturing. We are so glad to have you, Melissa.
It's so great to be here, Dorie. I'm already impressed in how you've been dancing to make this happen.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Well, it is a thrill to get to talk with you. And today we are going to be talking about how to create a strong company culture, which is a topic that a lot of us are thinking about and concerned about these days. We also want to say hi to some of the great folks who are tuning in and joining us from around the world. So please feel free to type into the chat box and let us know who you are, where you're dialing in from, and the questions that you have for Melissa. But Melissa, the first question that I have for you is, you write in your book, ReCulturing, culture is what we do, not what we have. That's not necessarily a way that most people have been trained to think about it. What do you mean by that?
So culture is, to me, something that is active. It is not this one-off HR initiative that maybe we do once in the lifetime of a company and then never look at again. And in the research I did for the book, I was actually surprised that culture as a concept has been around for 70 years. And, I think it is such a nebulous concept even today after 70 years. And one of the things that I found is that this idea of culture being this static thing that is associated with things we do in the office isn't my experience and a lot of people's experience of culture. So I believe, as you said, that it is something more active. It is a verb. It is something that each of us can design in a much more intentional way than I think how culture has been defined before.
I love that. That's great. Thank you, Melissa. We want to say hi to some of our great friends who are tuning in and joining us from around the world. We've got our friend Adnan from Turkey. We've got Hetty joining us from Philadelphia. Our friend Cheryl from Minneapolis, St. Paul. Karen from Boston. So many great regulars here. We have
Wow.
Dea from Durham. We've got Annette from New Jersey. Dwijendra is here from India. We've got Chie from Columbus. We've got Reince from from Kenya. We've got Delphine from,
Oh my
wow, from the
gosh.
DMV. I hope it goes fast for you, Delphine. I don't know which DMV, but my prayers are with you. So we're so happy to have all of you. Now,
I
Melissa,
love
maybe
it.
you can talk a little bit more about the inspiration for writing this book. I mean, you are an HR and talent professional. I'm sure, just about every HR and talent and learning professional has opinions about company culture, but it takes a lot to write a book and to put yourself out there and doing it. Why was it important for you to write this book? And what was your thought process like in actually taking the leap to do it?
Yeah, as you said, Dorie, I've been in this business for over 20 years. After 20 years, you just say 20 plus. And I've been in a lot of iconic high growth tech companies and have experienced what it is to be in an organization that has both a healthy strategy and a healthy culture. I've also had the opportunity to work in companies that didn't necessarily focus on that. And I was inspired to write this because, we're in 2022, and I think that there's been so much research that's been done about, the correlation between healthy cultures and business results. Yet it still seemed like everything I was researching and everything that was out there about culture was this very fuzzy topic, and it wasn't something that we could have agency around. And so I believe strongly that we can design cultures. And I often get asked that, why there's so much to this, do we really need to bother? Isn't it just something that happens organically? And the answer is yes. Culture is happening all around us every single day. in our organizations. And so it's up to us whether or not we want to design it or have it just evolve by default. And so I was just inspired to kind of create this blueprint or playbook, if you will, to help companies really design something much more tangible that you can integrate and, big word, operationalize into those core processes that we do anyway in an organization. So we all have to hire, we all are giving feedback to each other, we're recognizing each other. But I think the idea behind ReCulturing is doing all of those processes in a way that integrates those values and behaviors that you've defined for yourself.
Love that. That's great. We are here with Melissa Daimler. We're talking about how to create a strong company culture. The book is ReCulturing. And if you want to learn more about Melissa, just go to her website. It's melissadaimler.com. And if you want to make sure you are never missing one of our weekly Newsweek interview shows, we're here every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, 6 o'clock in CET time in Europe. Well, there's a way to do that too. You can make sure to go to, here we go, my friends, go to my website, go to DorieClark.com. You can sign up, get a free self-assessment. You will be added to the email list and you will get reminders about our great weekly conversations on topics like creating a strong company culture. We also want to continue saying hi to our amazing friends and viewers from around the world. There are so many cool folks tuning in, and we want to say hi to Sue, who's joining us from Portland. Christoph is in Budapest. We have a LinkedIn friend from New Jersey. We've got Carol joining us from Annapolis. We have Melissa, not that Melissa, but other Melissa from Phoenix. We've got
name.
Carlos from Colombia. We have a LinkedIn friend from Pittsburgh. Lisa's in New Orleans. Sandra's in Berkshire, England. We've got Alicia from Oakland. Celeste from South Africa. Doreen from Ohio, and so many more. We love having you all. Please type your questions for Melissa Daimler into the chat box. We'd love to hear what's on your mind about creating a strong company culture. Now, Melissa, a question that I have for you. We all know a lot of companies say, oh, we want to have a great culture. We want to change the culture. There is a big gap. And, it just kind of like half-heartedly, maybe it's sort of like a fad, or at least the people in the company feel like, oh, nobody's serious about this. And actually having something stick, actually having something create lasting change. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How can we actually, if we really do want to positively impact our company culture, how can we take the steps necessary to make it last?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think Ashish said that, it's really about taking care of your employees. But how does that look, to your point? Like, what does that even mean? And when I ask people, how do you define culture? There's so many different versions of what that is, even within a company. And so I think one of the first steps that I recommend in the book is to really go further than just defining your values. I think beyond the kind of silly definitions of culture, the organization's personality, what happens when the boss leaves the room, one of the common answers of what a culture is values. And I think that's a better start than most of those other definitions. But we need to go further and codify that to really say, what does that mean when we say innovative? I worked with two different companies whose value was innovative. One wanted a prototype quick, they wanted much faster momentum in ideas. One wanted to kind of slow down a little bit and make sure that those ideas were quality. So one behavior was, we make it safe to prototype quickly. The other company's behavior was, we ask each other why before we kind of dive into anything. And so that to me is such a great example, again, of two different companies with the same value. But if you take one further step and talk about what are those behaviors that we're really trying to get to with regard to innovation, it is a very different culture that starts to get created. So I think the first big step is to go beyond your values and really think about behaviorally, what are those observable actions that I would see you be doing if we were, for instance, innovative or exemplifying teamwork or whatever those values may be.
I love the idea of actually looking for observable behaviors and being thoughtful about that.
Hmm.
That's kind of a good detective work strategy. So thank you for that, Melissa. That's great. We also want to say
Yeah.
hi to some of our amazing friends tuning in. We've got Rania joining from Lebanon. Donnell is joining from Knoxville. We have Kwasunga from Angola. We have Elvis, who is joining us from a Spanish speaking country. We have Dominic from southern Germany, Charlie from Philadelphia, Yagbala from Delhi, and Maureen from the Jersey Shore, Mohammed from Pakistan, and Marian from Barcelona. We love having all of you. This is fantastic. We're talking with Melissa Daimler. She's the author of the book ReCulturing. We're talking about how to create a strong company culture. We love your questions. Please type in, let us know who you are, where you're dialing in from, and questions that you have for Melissa. Now, Melissa, we were mentioning earlier, you are the chief learning officer at Udemy. It's an online course creator, and cool company. I've created a course with Udemy as well, and so I'm curious. Let's get down to brass tacks. What do you do at Udemy when you think about creating a positive culture? Clearly, you are someone who wants to be walking the talk. Can you talk to us about
Hmm.
maybe one or two things that you specifically focus on or prioritize at Udemy that you believe are important for creating a strong culture?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're reculturing now, which is really exciting. We had, as a lot of companies do, a core set of values, and since culture is continuous, I think it's important to look at your culture and review it at different inflection points of a company's life cycle. And we are post IPO, we're growing fast, we're scaling, we're global. So and we just kind of shifted some of our strategy. So it was a really important time to kind of look at what we're doing culturally as well. And so we actually added a value, and we identified 15 core behaviors in association with those values. But the other thing, and being part of a learning company that I think is missing for a lot of leaders is, even when you define these behaviors and integrate them in, some of the skills needed to reinforce those behaviors aren't there. So I think part of the commitment of an organization is to make sure that we provide learning experiences that help people build those skills. And I'll give you an example. No surprise, one of our values is always learning. We, in this last set of conversations with employees and our leaders, realize that a big behavior for us to reinforce that value is to have these constructive debates to make decisions. That we found, we're talking a lot about diversity and inclusion and making sure that we hear everybody's voice. And a big way to do that is to encourage debate and hear everybody's point of view. But people don't necessarily have the skills to have constructive debate. So, how do we help them develop those skills? How do we create learning experiences where they can practice those skills? So that's one of the things that we're focused on now. So I think a big piece to this, after you've defined and kind of integrated your behaviors into your core processes, is to make sure that you're continuing to help develop employees to build those skill sets.
I love it. That's an important point. We're here with Melissa Daimler. She is the author of the book ReCulturing. We're talking about how to create a strong company culture. We also want to make sure to say hi to some of our amazing friends. Whoa, we'll say hi from the opposite direction. Yes, we will. And who we are talking to, we're saying hi to Susie, who is joining us from Texas. We've got Monica from Brazil, Adriana from Mexico, Balaji from Bangalore. We've got Beth from Exton, Pennsylvania, Kate also from Pennsylvania, Vanessa from Cincinnati, and many more. Oh my God, but wow, Pennsylvania in the house. Hi, Bonnie from Pennsylvania, and Armando from Lima, Peru. We love it. And a great question has just come through. I'll put it up on the board here. Sue is curious, Melissa. She wants to know, what is one thing that has to happen to create a culture by the people, for the people? If we were,
I saw that
I don't know, going to
question. Yeah.
create America, or if we were going to create a company, how do we get by the people, for the people? Melissa Daimler, author of ReCulturing, what do you think?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I'm a big believer in co-creating the culture. I think some companies believe in top down, some do it bottom up. I think both have to happen. And I think in order to do that well, you do first have to talk to the leadership team, and identify what are those non-negotiables. So before you even go out to the rest of the employee base, make sure that you understand what's important that has to be part of the culture behaviorally from that leadership team. Because I think, not identifying that first could create some confusion and even, disengagement from employees if you don't get that clear. So I think that's the first thing. And then I always say, 10% of the organization is a good number to connect with in focus groups or one-on-ones, however you want to get that information. But I think really understanding from employees, asking key questions like, tell me, what does it look like when things are going well here? Talk to me about when good decisions are made. Think about colleagues that you work with that, where you have an enjoyable experience. What is happening there? What kind of behaviors are you seeing? Are you observing? And so you start to curate these behaviors until they get to a place where you start to see some similarities. You start to see themes over time at about that 10% number, which is why I share that particular number. And then you go back and talk to the leadership team. It's a very messy process, as a lot of good processes are, and bring that feedback to them, tweak it a little bit, go back to employees, and pretty soon you have this really solid list of behaviors. I also say that it's really important in this day and age, especially. I mean, I've been in this business so long. I still remember the big binders of 100 competencies that we've come up with for the company to use as a standard when thinking about leadership. We never looked at them. They got dust, and eventually we threw them out. So I think part of this process is it's really important to get down to a certain number of behaviors, no more than 15 ideally. So you're focused more on integrating and using and modeling those behaviors rather than focused on trying to remember them. So co-creation is the key. Mario actually asked another question that I want to get to is, if that's okay, Dorie. And then
Yeah, I was just going
Oh my
there. So
God!
yes, Mario from Lisbon. Yes.
Love it. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That is such a common quote. We've heard it. I think Peter Drucker was the
Peter
first one.
Drucker,
So
that's it. Yeah.
And my joke to this is, culture and strategy should eat breakfast together. I think both are important. And one of the things that I know you and I have talked about, Dorie, that I talk about in the book is this idea of systems thinking, that it's really important to connect what we're doing at a strategic level with what we're doing culturally. And if we cannot focus so much on what's better or what we have to focus on first, but make sure that they're linked and that there is, an understanding of why we're focused on certain things in strategy and how our behaviors are going to support that. I think that's more important than anything else.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. Again, we're here with Melissa Daimler. She's the author of the book ReCulturing. It is great. You can check it out, and you can learn more about Melissa and her work. Just go to her website. It's melissadaimler.com. And we're here talking about how to create a strong culture. And Melissa, a great question came in that I wanted to ask. It is a question. Let's see if I can find it right here. It is a question from Hetty in Philadelphia. And Hetty wants to know, what are the best KPIs for the uninitiated? This is key performance indicators. So what are the best key performance indicators to use to measure culture? This is a great question, of course. I mean, culture, theoretically, it could be a little amorphous. It could be, I don't know, feels good,
Yeah.
feels bad. We don't know. How do we actually measure it effectively?
Yeah. The metrics question is always a good one and always a challenging one. I think ideally, if you've embedded your behaviors into some of those core processes, it is much easier to measure. So, as an example, again, I've been in this business for a long time, and it still feels like 20 years later, we're still challenged by the feedback process, the performance management process. And I think one of the reasons we're challenged by that is because we haven't declared what it is we're giving feedback on or how we're measuring performance because we haven't codified those behaviors. And so I think after you've done that, it's really important to embed those into your feedback process and your performance management process. And so understanding and looking at if we have 15 behaviors and we're getting feedback from each other on a consistent basis on how we're doing against those behaviors, I think that is such a good metric to understand, where are we doing well? What are some of the behaviors that people are really nailing and having no problem exemplifying, and then where do we have gaps? And then that's good feedback for us as an organization to help them gain skills to increase those behaviors, or understand, maybe get underneath the issue even more, and maybe there's some leaders who aren't understanding how that behavior needs to show up. So I think that's one piece. We're also embedding those specific behaviors into our engagement survey. I think sometimes there's these very generic questions in an engagement survey of, do the leaders exemplify the values? And that's too general, versus, again, being much more specific. Does the leadership team exemplify the opportunity to have debate? Do my colleagues do that? So I think having the specific behaviors in those processes allows us to then measure whether or not we're doing them effectively.
Excellent. That's really good. Thank you very much. We're here with Melissa Daimler. She's the author of the book ReCulturing. And if you are enjoying this conversation, if you are enjoying Melissa's intelligent answers and also having fun, watch me try to try really valiantly to do this on my telephone, because the Fairmont, Washington's email is and internet is so bad. I hope you fix it, Fairmont.
That you paid $25 for.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay.
You can hit the like button and hit the share button so that your friends can benefit from this conversation and enjoy some of the unintentional humor based on me trying to make sure my arm doesn't go asleep. Melissa Daimler is the author of ReCulturing, and you guys are asking amazing questions. I love this.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh. So this one, it's possible it might cover our entire faces, most kinda, sorta. So I'm gonna do a quick synopsis here. But Badri has a fantastic question, Melissa, that I like and I think is really worth diving into. Badri says, leadership nowadays changes, every 2 or 3 years, and it seems like everyone tries to change the culture. Is it possible to change the culture so frequently in an organization? What do you think about the pace of change? It's true. Lots of leaders want to put their stamp on an organization. What happens to an organization if there's the churn of actual or attempted culture changes? What do you think, Melissa?
I'll go back to, Sue's great question. I think the idea of culture being a continuous process, it needs to happen. And, we also need to balance that with not being, whipsawed. Like, you don't want to change things just for change's sake. I think part of the value of this process, it's what I fondly call a twofer, in that it's not just getting to a clear set of behaviors, it's also how you do it. So being able to clarify if you are evolving, let's say, the culture, being really clear to your employees as to why we're even doing it. It's not, we are at a different point in time. Often in the creation of behaviors, they're aspirational many times. So we're not necessarily seeing those behaviors now, or we see some of them, but we want to see more of it. And so I've seen companies and been part of companies where the behaviors that used to be aspirational are now just kind of part of our everyday work, so much so we don't even need to call them out. So I think it's important to, when new leaders come in, especially, to say, hey, here's what we're going to keep. Here's what's working. And we're going to just dive into some conversations to see if we need to kind of evolve our culture and our behaviors, just based on where we are as a company. And then to have that conversation with the employees, I think is really key. So I think as with any kind of evolution or change in a company, being clear and having context for why we're even having these conversations is really important.
That's fantastic. We're here with Melissa Daimler. If you want to learn more about Melissa, her book is ReCulturing, and her website is right here. It's melissadaimler.com. You can check that out. We're talking about how to create a strong company culture. And we want to say hi to some of our amazing friends who are joining us. We've got Jim from Aberdeen, Scotland. We've got Charlene from Aruba. We have Aishel from Azerbaijan. And we have Maria Christie from the Philippines and Diana from South Carolina. We love having all of you. We are winding down, but we have time, Melissa, for one more question. And I wanted to tap one from Alicia in Oakland. This is a great question. She wants to know, what are team activities that you recommend for creating, embodying, and shaping culture? What are your thoughts?
That is a good question. I think team activities, there's a wide definition of what that could look like. I often use those team opportunities to reinforce our purpose and our strategy and culture. And our team, as an example, is getting together in a few weeks, and we're doing some work around our own kind of team purpose. And key to this, though, is we're tying it to the purpose of our organization. So I think it's really important when you're doing team activities that it's embedded within the bigger vision of the organization, so that the team knows how it's connected to the organization, as well as how the team members are connected to each other. So the other thing I would say is a piece that we didn't talk about as much is this idea of practices. Kind of those everyday things that we're doing, meetings, one-on-ones, connection points, and that often is done by team. So the extent that you can reinforce behaviors and integrate those into those everyday kind of practices, I think is such a great opportunity as well.
Fantastic. Well, we have been here with Melissa Daimler. She is the author of the new book, ReCulturing. She's the Chief Learning Officer of Udemy. And Melissa, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you. And Dorie, thanks for dancing in that hotel room without Wi-Fi.
I would not miss this for the world. We want to thank all of you for tuning in. Again, if you've enjoyed this conversation, hit the like and share button so your friends can benefit from it and learn about Melissa and her great new book. And thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next Thursday, 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific, 6 o'clock in Europe. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.